The price of pride. Admiral Xerath stood before the great viewing window of the Meridian Empire's flagship Eternal Dawn, his scaled hands clasped behind his back as he watched the small blue-green world rotate beneath them. New Eden, the humans called it, another of their countless colony worlds, but this one held special significance. Intelligence suggested it housed the Empire's most promising target yet. The settlement is called Haven's Rest, Sub-Commander Ayara reported, her crystalline voice echoing in the chamber. Population of 3,000. Our intelligence confirms that among them is Sophia Chen, daughter of General Sarah Chen. Xerath's violet eyes narrowed. General Chen, the human who had humiliated the Empire at the Battle of Proxima, who had refused their generous offer of protected status, choosing instead to maintain humanity's independence. This would be a perfect opportunity to demonstrate the cost of such defiance. Prepare the Shadowfall units, he ordered. I want this done quietly. No orbital bombardment, no mass casualties. Take the children, all of them. The raid began at local midnight. Meridian dropships, their stealth fields rendering them nearly invisible, descended through New Eden's atmosphere like falling stars. The Shadowfall units, elite commandos in phase-shift armor, moved through Haven's Rest with terrible efficiency. Their neural suppressors dropped adults where they stood, while children were quickly gathered and transported to waiting ships. In a modest home at the edge of the settlement, 13-year-old Sophia Chen woke to the sound of breaking glass. She reached for her emergency beacon, just as her mother had taught her, but strong hands seized her before she could activate it. The last thing she saw before unconsciousness took her was a faceless helmet with glowing purple eyes. The raid was over in less than an hour. 47 children, aged between 4 and 15, were secured in stasis pods aboard the Eternal Dawn. As the ship prepared to jump to hyperspace, Admiral Xerath recorded a message to be broadcast to human space. To the leadership of Earth and her colonies. Your children sleep in our halls. Their fate rests in your hands. Accept Imperial protection, submit to our guidance, and they will be returned. Resist, and they will be raised as loyal citizens of the Empire, never to remember their former lives. You have 48 hours to respond. The message was sent. The Eternal Dawn jumped to hyperspace, and in a secure facility on Earth, a quantum communications array registered the emergency beacon's last transmission. General Sarah Chen was in a classified briefing when the news reached her. The room fell silent as she read the message. Those present would later recall that she showed no emotion, no rage, no fear. She simply stood, tucked her tablet into her uniform pocket, and walked to the door. General, one of the admirals called after her. What are your orders? She paused at the threshold. I'm taking a leave of absence, effective immediately. Personal reasons. But the Empire will learn, she said quietly, why we have legends about mothers who would tear apart heaven and hell to save their children. In her private quarters, Sarah Chen opened a locked case she hadn't touched in 15 years. Inside lay a set of armor unlike anything the Empire had ever encountered. Not powered by conventional energy or advanced technology, but by something far older. Something that predated humanity's rise to the stars. As she donned the armor, runes began to glow along its surface, not with electric light, but with an inner fire that seemed to drink in the darkness around it. She spoke 7 words in a language older than recorded history, and reality itself shuddered. On board the Eternal Dawn, Admiral Xerath was reviewing the prisoner manifest when the ship's sensors registered an impossibility. A single human life sign, somewhere in the cargo hold. As security teams converged on the location, the temperature throughout the ship began to drop. Frost formed on metal surfaces, and in the darkness between cargo containers, something moved. The first security team found only an empty corridor, their sensors unable to locate the intruder. The second team disappeared entirely, their final transmission consisting of a single word: Mother. As alarms began to sound throughout the ship, Admiral Xereth received a direct transmission on his private channel. The voice was calm, measured, and carried the weight of ancient things. "You took my daughter," Sarah Chen said. "Now I'm going to show you why the old stories warn about making deals with powers you don't understand. Why our ancestors drew protective circles and hung iron above their doors. You wanted to teach humanity a lesson about power. Let me teach you one about fear." The lights throughout the eternal dawn went out. In the darkness, something began to hunt. Echoes of the hunt. Imperial Command received the first reports 3 days after the Haven's Rest raid. An outpost in the Centauri sector had gone dark. Not destroyed. There were no signs of weapons fire, no debris fields, no distress calls. The entire station, housing over 300 personnel, had simply ceased all communications. When the investigation team arrived, they found the station intact but empty. Environmental systems functioned normally. Food remained half-eaten in the mess hall. But of the crew, there was no trace. Only a message burned into the main command center's wall. "Where are the children?" High Commander Voss of Imperial Intelligence dismissed the incident as an isolated event, likely the work of human special forces. Then a second outpost went silent. A third. A fourth. Each scene identical. Facilities intact, crews vanished. The same question seared into metal walls. In her quarters aboard the Eternal Dawn, Sophia Chen woke from stasis to find herself in a comfortable but clearly supervised environment. Through her window, she could see unfamiliar stars. Other children occupied nearby rooms, all connected by a common area where Imperial caregivers watched them with a mixture of caution and genuine concern. "Your new life begins today," announced Supervisor Kira, a tall Meridian with iridescent scales. "The Empire will provide you with education, opportunity, and purpose. In time, you will understand this was for the best." Sophia said nothing, but she remembered her mother's words. "If trouble comes, stay quiet. Watch, wait. I will always find you." At night, she dreamed of shadows moving between stars. On the Empire's capital world of Meridia Prime, the High Council convened an emergency session. Reports flowed in hourly, supply lines disrupted, communications relays failing, entire battle groups reporting phantom signals that led them on endless pursuits through empty space. "This is no conventional warfare," argued Council Member Teth, his plumage ruffled with agitation. "Our sensors detect no ships, no weapons, yet our forces are being systematically isolated and eliminated." High Commander Voss stepped forward, mandibles clicking with nervous energy. "We've analyzed the pattern of attacks. They're not random. Each target held information about the transport routes of the Haven's Rest children. Someone is tracking them, hunting for their location." "General Chen," whispered another council member. "But how?" "No human vessel could penetrate our defenses, slip past our sensors." "Because she's not using a ship," interrupted a new voice. The council chamber darkened as Admiral Xereth's hologram materialized in their midst. His usual composure was gone, replaced by barely controlled panic. "She's using something else, something older. We found ancient texts in her daughter's possession, books of human legends, stories of beings that could move through shadows, who made bargains with powers beyond space and time." In the silence that followed, the temperature in the council chamber began to drop. The Eternal Dawn had changed course 6 times in the past week, trying to obscure its destination. Admiral Xereth knew it was futile. His crew jumped at shadows. Equipment malfunctioned in impossible ways. Navigation systems would suddenly display coordinates in ancient human languages before shutting down entirely. In the children's quarter, Sophia Chen sat cross-legged on her bed, softly humming a lullaby her mother had taught her. The melody seemed to echo through the ship's corridors, growing distorted, taking on harmonics that set teeth on edge, and made shadows writhe in corners. Supervisor Kira noticed that the other children had begun to watch Sophia with a mixture of fear and anticipation. They whispered among themselves about dreams of a dark figure moving through starlight, of a mother's fury given form and purpose. On the bridge, Admiral Xereth received word that another battle group had gone silent. But this time, there was a survivor, a single communications officer, found floating in a survival pod. The officer's report was brief, but terrifying. A woman in Arctic armor had appeared on their bridge, moving through solid walls as if they were mist. She had asked about the children. When denied answers, she had smiled. Then the shadows had come alive. "Sir," his tactical officer called out, voice shaking. "We're receiving a transmission. It's on all frequencies, all channels simultaneously." "That's not possible." "Put it through," Xereth ordered, even as dread pooled in his stomach. Sarah Chen's voice filled the bridge, calm and terribly gentle. "I can smell my daughter's dreams. Admiral, I know she's there. Did you think your ships could hide from a mother's love? From the bargains I made before humanity reached for the stars, you took our children to teach us about power. Let me teach you about the power of a mother's promise." The lights flickered. In the darkness between pulses, crew members swore they could see a figure standing just behind the Admiral, a woman in ancient armor, her eyes burning with starfire, her smile promising retribution. The hunt was nearing its end. The darkness between stars. The Meridian Empire had faced rebellion before. They had crushed insurgencies, quelled uprisings, and subdued entire star systems. But they had never encountered anything like this. A shadow war that left no bodies, no debris, only empty ships and stations haunted by whispered stories of a mother's wrath. Deep in the secure archives beneath Meridia Prime, Counselor Vax reviewed classified footage from their latest loss, the Imperial cruiser Dominion. The ship's cameras showed only brief glimpses, corridors filling with impossible darkness, crew members reaching for weapons that turned to rust in their hands, and always that same figure in Arctic armor, asking one question: "Where are my children?" "It defies analysis," muttered Research Director Naira, her crystalline fingers moving across holographic displays. "No energy signatures we recognize, no warp signatures, no quantum trails. She simply appears as if the space between stars themselves parts at her command." Vax's scales rippled with unease. "The humans have legends, don't they? Stories of beings who could walk through shadows, who made bargains with forces beyond our understanding. Myths," Naira insisted, but her voice wavered. "Folk tales to frighten children." And yet, Vax gestured to the screens showing empty ship after empty ship. "Here we are." Aboard the Eternal Dawn, Sophia Chen continued her quiet resistance. During educational sessions, she would tell the other children stories, tales of Earth's ancient warriors, of deals struck in darkness, of mothers who could reshape reality to protect their young. The Imperial instructors tried to stop her, but the stories spread like whispers in shadow. "My mother," she told a young boy who missed his family, "once said that love is the oldest power in the universe, older than stars, older than space itself. And a mother's love, that's the strongest kind there is." The ship's systems began to malfunction with increasing frequency. Navigation computers would display coordinates in ancient Earth scripts. Communication channels played fragments of lullabies. Security cameras caught glimpses of a woman in armor standing in corridors that should have been empty, only to show empty halls when guards arrived. Admiral Xereth no longer slept. He had ordered the children moved 3 times in the past week, shuttling them between ships and stations, trying to break the trail that Sarah Chen somehow followed. But each new hiding place was found, each security measure bypassed, each fortress penetrated. "Sir," his first officer reported, "we've lost contact with the Outer Rim fleet. All 40 ships gone dark simultaneously." Xereth stared at the tactical display, watching as more and more sectors went black. The Empire's mighty naval forces were being systematically isolated, corralled, herded. But toward what? In her quarters, Sophia felt the change in the ship's vibrations. She smiled, recognizing the subtle shift in the environmental systems that her mother had taught her to notice. The hunting was nearly done. Now came the haunting. Throughout the ship, crew members began to dream. They dreamed of Earth's ancient forests, of deals struck in starlit groves, of powers that predated civilization. They dreamed of a mother's promise, carved into the fabric of reality itself. "I will always find you." The Eternal Dawn's chief medical officer reported a surge in crew members requesting sleep suppressants. Those who did sleep spoke of a woman standing by their beds, wearing armor that seemed to drink in light, asking them where the children were hidden. Even those who took suppressants began to see her in reflective surfaces, in the space between heartbeats. In the ship's massive engine room, engineers reported strange phenomena. Quantum matrices aligned themselves into patterns resembling ancient Earth symbols. Power fluctuations followed rhythms that musicologists would later identify as matching prehistoric human chants. High Command received Xereth's increasingly desperate reports with growing alarm. The Admiral spoke of shadows that moved against light sources, of crew members who would stare into dark corners and whisper responses to unheard questions, of a presence that seemed to permeate the very hull of his ship. "She's not attacking us," he transmitted during one particularly haunted watch. "She's teaching us about power we never knew existed, about forces we were foolish enough to dismiss as superstition. We thought ourselves advanced, enlightened. We thought technology and progress had moved us beyond such primitive fears. We were wrong." In the children's quarters, Sophia Chen sat with the others, teaching them her mother songs. The melodies seemed to resonate with the ship's own frequencies, creating harmonies that made Imperial guards shiver and check their weapons compulsively. "My mother," she told her fellow captives, "isn't just coming to save us. She's coming to show the Empire why Earth's oldest stories warn about taking children from their parents, why our ancestors drew protective circles and spoke binding words, why some powers can't be measured by science or contained by technology." The Empire was about to learn that humanity's advancement into the stars hadn't replaced their ancient powers. It had merged with them, creating something new and terrible. Something that wore armor made from shadows and moved through the dark between stars with a mother's implacable purpose. The hunt was over. The haunting was reaching its peak, and soon would come the reckoning. Breaking an empire. The Meridian Empire's capital world had never known fear. Protected by layers of defenses, mighty fleets, and technologies beyond human comprehension, Meridia Prime stood as a testament to imperial power. Yet now its nights were filled with whispers, its streets with shadows that moved against the light. In the Imperial Palace's war room, High Commander Voss watched as another defense grid went dark. Not destroyed, simply dead, its quantum processors reduced to primitive silicon, its advanced alloys transformed to basic iron. Across the sector, the Empire's proudest achievements were being unmade, stripped of their technological sophistication by forces that defied analysis. "She's not just hunting," Voss realized, mandibles clicking in agitation. "She's dismantling us, piece by piece, system by system." The evidence was undeniable. Hyperspace routes that had served the Empire for centuries suddenly became treacherous, ships emerging from jumps to find themselves centuries off course. Quantum communications arrays received transmissions from Earth's past, fragments of ancient rituals, children's lullabies, a mother's promises of protection. Aboard the Eternal Dawn, now hiding in the heart of Imperial space, Admiral Xereth received the reports with growing dread. His mighty warship, once the pride of the Imperial fleet, had become a prison. Not for the children they held, for his crew. Another section lost contact. "Sir," his first officer reported, voice trembling. "Deck 7 just ceased to exist. Sensors show only void where corridors should be." In the children's quarters, Sophia Chen felt her mother's approach in her bones. The other children felt it too, gathering around her as she told them stories of Earth's ancient powers, stories that seemed to resonate with the very fabric of space-time around them. In the old days, she told them, mothers made bargains with forces beyond understanding to protect their children. They wove spells from starlight, and sealed pacts with powers that dwelt in darkness. The Empire thought those were just stories. They're about to learn differently. The first breach of Meridia Prime's defenses came not with weapons or ships, but with dreams. Every citizen, from the highest counselor to the lowest worker, dreamed of Earth's ancient forests, of deals struck in shadow, of a mother's love transforming into something vast and terrible. They dreamed of Sarah Chen. In orbit, automated defense platforms began to fail, their quantum processors reverting to base elements. Ground-based shields flickered and died as their power sources transformed into primitive chemical batteries. The Empire's technology, their pride and strength, was being systematically reduced to its most basic components. In the Imperial Palace, the High Council gathered in emergency session. The chamber's advanced holographic displays showed static images of Earth's prehistoric sites, stone circles, ancient caves, places where humanity's earliest ancestors had first reached out to powers beyond their understanding. "We must return the children," Council Member Teth argued, his plumage flat with fear. Before the chamber plunged into darkness. When emergency lights activated, Sarah Chen stood among them. Her armor seemed to be made of living shadow, ancient symbols burning across its surface with inner fire. But it was her eyes that held them, eyes that had seen the space between stars, that had bargained with forces the Empire had forgotten existed. "You took our children," she said, her voice echoing with harmonics that made reality itself shiver. "You thought it would teach us our place. Instead, you're going to learn why Earth's oldest stories warn about the wrath of mothers." Across Imperial space, every quantum computer simultaneously displayed the same message, written in scripts that predated human civilization. "Return them, or watch your empire crumble to dust and memory." The High Council, faced with the impossible made manifest, voted to comply. But Admiral Xerath, his mind twisted by fear and pride, made one final, fatal mistake. "If we cannot have them," he transmitted to his fleet, "then no one will." He ordered the Eternal Dawn to activate its quantum core's self-destruct sequence. In the children's quarters, Sophia Chen heard the alarms and smiled. She knew what came next. The ship's lights died. In the darkness between heartbeats, reality held its breath. And Sarah Chen, who had bargained with powers older than stars to protect her child, prepared to demonstrate why some forces transcend even death itself. The Empire was about to witness the full power of a mother's love, and the terrible price of ignoring humanity's oldest warnings. Reckoning. The Eternal Dawn's quantum core pulsed with unstable energy, its containment fields fluctuating as Admiral Xerath's final command executed. Throughout the massive ship, emergency klaxons wailed their warning of imminent destruction. But in the darkness between those blaring sounds, something else moved, something that made the laws of physics themselves step aside. Sarah Chen materialized on the bridge, her ancient armor drinking in the emergency lights. Around her, crew members froze in terror as reality distorted, shadows stretching and twisting like living things. The Admiral raised his sidearm, but found himself holding a handful of rust. "Did you think," Sarah asked, her voice carrying harmonics that made the ship's hull resonate, "that I would let you take them from me twice?" In the children's quarters, Sophia led the others in a song, one her mother had taught her, one that had been old when humanity first looked to the stars. The melody seemed to weave through the ship's failing systems, transforming panic into purpose. The quantum core's containment began to fail. But where science predicted destruction, something else occurred. The energies, instead of exploding outward, flowed like water, channeled by forces that predated the Empire's understanding of physics. Sarah Chen stood at the heart of it all, her armor's symbols burning with ancient fire as she rewrote the laws of reality around her. "I made bargains," she told the terrified bridge crew, "with powers your empire forgot existed. I traded pieces of myself to forces that dwell in the spaces between stars, all to ensure that no one, no empire, no power, no force in this universe could ever harm my child." The quantum core's energy, now fully unleashed, swirled around her like a storm of living light. But instead of destruction, it brought transformation. The eternal dawn itself began to change, its advanced materials reverting to simpler forms, its weapons becoming harmless metal, its prison barriers dissolving into mist. Admiral Xerath watched in horror as his mighty warship was unmade not by violence, but by something far older, a power that could reshape reality itself. "What are you?" he whispered. "I am what every mother becomes when her child is threatened," Sarah answered, her eyes burning with starfire. "I am the reason your ancestors drew protective circles and spoke binding words. I am why the old stories warn about taking children from their parents." Throughout the ship, shadows coalesced into pathways, ancient ways of moving through space that humanity had known before they built their first rockets. The captured children, led by Sophia, walked these paths unafraid, guided by the songs they had learned. On Meridia Prime, the High Council watched through failing quantum feeds as their greatest warship was transformed. Not destroyed. Transformed into something that straddled the line between their science and humanity's older powers. "Remember this." Sarah Chen's voice echoed through every Imperial communication system, carried by networks far older than electronics. "Remember that humanity's rise to the stars didn't mean we forgot our ancient powers. It meant we learned to combine them with new ones." The Eternal Dawn, now more legend than vessel, hung in space as a monument to the Empire's hubris. Its crew, though unharmed, would forever after speak in whispers of what they had witnessed, of how the most advanced technology in known space had been humbled by a mother's love and determination. Sophia Chen, reunited with her mother in the space between moments, smiled. "You came," she said simply. "I will always come for you," Sarah replied, holding her daughter close. "That's the oldest promise in the universe." The Empire's response was immediate and absolute. Not only were all kidnapped children returned to their families, but a new law was passed, one that would be carved into the foundation stones of every Imperial world. It spoke not of technology or military might, but of older powers, of boundaries that should never be crossed, of the terrible price of threatening the human child. In the years that followed, the galaxy would change. The Empire's arrogance was tempered by the knowledge that their advanced civilization was young compared to some powers. Humanity, while maintaining their independence, shared some of their ancient knowledge, teaching the Empire that progress didn't mean abandoning old wisdom. And in quiet corners of space stations, in the shadows of mighty warships, those who had witnessed Sarah Chen's power told stories. Stories of a mother's love transcending physics. Stories of powers older than stars coming to a child's aid. Stories that would be passed down through generations, reminding both humans and aliens that some forces in the universe transcend all boundaries. The Empire had sought to teach humanity about power. Instead, they had learned about powers they never knew existed, powers born of love, of determination, and of promises that could reshape reality itself. For in the end, the most powerful force in the universe wasn't technology or military might, or even the ability to move between stars. It was a mother's promise. "I will always find you."